The virtual CISO moment is brought to you by vCISO Services, a leading provider of quality and experienced virtual chief information security officers for small and mid-sized businesses. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the virtual CISO moment. William Birchett joins us today. He is the president of Logos Systems and founder of the vCISO network. William, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to hear a little bit about your background, how you got involved and interested in information security, and particularly as you migrated into the virtual CISO space.
Sure, absolutely. So interest in cybersecurity, this has been going on ever since I would say I was a teenager. Back in the day of getting on bulletin boards and reading the rainbow books and all the hacker knowledge that was out there, and then it just expanded from there. Different parts of my career, moving in different areas, just the interest kept growing. So at this point, I've officially been doing IT since about 98. Been doing the virtual CISO since going on about 2 years now. And yeah.
So how did you migrate into the virtual CISO space?
Sure. So during COVID, I'd always done kind of the 1099 work and consulting. And, when during COVID, I think we all had a little bit of a chance to sit down and reflect what we really wanted to do and, what our goals were. And so October of, 2020 is when I decided, let me go ahead and start this up officially, and then, start working for myself.
And so then you're an entrepreneur as well, too, it sounds like.
I am.
So did I pronounce it right at the beginning? Is it Logos System?
Logos, depending on if you want to take the Greek word or
what is the Greek word that's based on? I'm not Greek. I don't know. I took Latin in school, but not Greek.
Yeah. So logos or logos is kind of the root word for logic. Logical thinking. It's also, a lot of the philosophers say that logos is what makes humans human. And, in information security, it's all about that human element and, getting security to where it's usable and not intrusive. So, the ability to think, learn, reason, that's logos.
So what is your, okay, so you provide virtual CISO services through Logos, or whatever the preferred pronunciation is, depending upon if you want to go Greek or not. What is your typical client? Do you have a specific industry or size you focus on, or not?
No. As clients, we're running virtual CISO services for some FQHCs, so fully federally qualified healthcare centers. Also, I've got manufacturing, apparel, supply chain, software development companies. To me, security is security. It's, my smallest customer has about 4 employees, and the largest one is, close to 1,000. So it's, big mix and different industries.
So seeing that, couple of questions that come to mind. First of all, what is your experience as to why a company comes looking for a virtual CISO service?
Sure. I think a lot of it is they've been given bad advice and they want good advice. I also think that, they realize that with the regulations, with the insurance industry changes, that there's things that they need. They don't know how to get. They ask their managed service providers, they ask, if they have in-house IT staff, and really it becomes figuring out what that knowledge gap is and who can fill that knowledge gap and what can we afford. And most of the time it is a fractional or virtual CISO that foots the bill. And so that's what I've seen is they know they need it. They're an insurance company telling them they need it. And then, regulations. So
So you've been doing this now since October of 2020, so closing in on 2 years, and I'm sure you've seen a lot and you've learned a lot in the virtual CISO space. Just based on your experience, what would you think are some um, qualities of a successful vCISO? So maybe the must-haves, the should-haves, the nice-to-haves, and the don't need. What are some qualities that make a virtual CISO successful?
Well, and I think this is also what makes a CISO successful.
Mhm.
It's being able to understand the business risks, the business mission, focus, um, and then being able to build a security program and a communication path with the leadership that is, that way they take the advice, understand what those risks are and can make a logical decision on how to handle those risks. And that's probably the must have, is you have to have an understanding
Mhm.
of what questions to ask of a board, if there is a board, or of the leadership of the company. How can I, if something were to happen, what would kill your business?
Mhm.
There's many different factors. What would kill your business? And understanding that this scenario, or stock market, or supply chain, or whatever that risk is, that those, we catalog, we call it a risk register, but then understanding how to advise them. And from a business point of view, understanding technical controls and tools and things like that, I think that's lower on the list. A CISO, first and foremost, is a business advisor. And taking those controls, tools, elements, yes, that protects the company, but it can only go so far. Building that company culture, the understanding, that's where the golden ticket is. And so there's not a one size fits all security program, tools, tech stack, whatever you want to call it. You've got to have that business acumen.
I think you bring up a really good point, and that's one that's becoming more and more obvious. Maybe that's not quite the right word, but it's definitely emerging in the vCISO field where there are different types of virtual CISOs. And one of the types that I tend to try to caution folks that are looking for virtual CISOs are those that are from managed service providers or managed security service providers that are more on a technical base, because it would seem that if you're not coming from a risk management perspective, that you're really not necessarily acting as a virtual CISO, just like a CISO isn't strictly technical, but has to understand all that.
I would agree. And, that's part of the reason why I started the vCISO network. I was out on these different boards, and, in the SMB space, you look at managed service providers, and, I thought maybe that's, the angle to market and run the business, and then MSSPs. And then, what I was seeing was that everything was about what tool can I buy? What's the seat price? What security is it going to provide? You've got MSP advisors out there saying, buy this tool, run this scan, read this report to the customer. They'll buy security, raise your MRR or your monthly reoccurring revenue. And I think the tough thing that was frustrating to me as a CISO is, yes, that will protect data, but it's not going to protect the company. There's a difference between understanding that due diligence and due care. And I think that's why I created the vCISO network, was let's have a place for vCISOs to get together, learn from each other. Let's start improving the maturity of the role. Fractional CISOs have been around for a very long time. It's just now blowing up and getting popular. But, there's all kinds of people that think, okay, let me just be a vCISO, and, let me do that for a year, and then I can go out and get a CISO role.
It actually should be the other way around.
It should. And that's the way it was for me. Right.
Mhm.
I went in, ran a 6,000 person organization with, about a 2 billion a year revenue. So I've been in the CISO seat, and on the advisory board seats. And so that was the reverse. And so I do think it needs to be that, but, it doesn't help when your big audit firms, they will go in and stand up a vCISO arm because, they're going to go in and audit, find all the things that need to be remediated. And then they're going to go in and sell their vCISO service to then turn around and sell managed service. And so it becomes a sales arm. And, I don't think that has the best interest of the business in mind. It just becomes a revenue generator. And, I think that's where we as vCISOs need to mature, raise expectations, get where the clients are looking at a vCISO as truly that business advisor and not a salesman.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of discussion recently. I think a few weeks on LinkedIn there was a thread where the one person was giving an advice that to get into cybersecurity, just claim your vCISO and then use your clients to gain that experience, kind of like OJT without them knowing. For free, right.
If I remember the post.
Right. But that can cause, I think, two big risks where you're first of all not providing, as you said beforehand, that sometimes firms look to vCISOs because they've been given bad advice. So you're giving bad advice to the companies because you don't know what you're doing, because you self-admittedly you're trying to learn on the job, and then also you're basically telling other people, you're giving the advice to, in essence, lie, and that's like a kind of a tenet of the security industry as far as like code of ethics. It's like, don't lie. But I love the fact that you have created the vCISO network, the sharing platform. And I sort of came upon it, I believe, from a LinkedIn post. In fact, it might have been from you. Tell me a little bit more about how that's structured and how it's promoted and what the real, I know you talked a little bit about getting vCISOs together to share knowledge and best practices. Maybe dive in a little bit deeper into some of the things you're hoping for there.
Sure, absolutely. So the forum itself, I wanted a platform off of social media. There's a lot of security professionals that are like, I want to collaborate, but I'm not going to do it on social media. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I did was made the choice not to do it on LinkedIn, not to do it on a Facebook group or something like that. And so, I went out and I found Mighty Networks, which, it's the same forums that power TED and, a lot of big industry forums. And so, I invested in that as the platform, just so that, we're not stuck to social. A lot of people act different on social media versus a professional forum. And so that was kind of the first call. Then, looking at, the goal of it was, let's put out good advice, get good CISOs on. I haven't started really marketing it other than a little bit here and there on LinkedIn. But the idea is, let's get some good advice on these boards and good discussions, because then as we fully market, open it up, that there's mature, vCISOs that are practicing, that, that understand the role of a CISO and how to do that, whether it be in the enterprise or SMB space. And then that way we're kind of elevating that, the maturity, the expected deliverables of a vCISO. Things like how to run a business impact assessment, what's its purpose, same with a privacy impact assessment, talking about the latest regulations, getting rid of the fear, right? I think the biggest thing in cybersecurity is a lot of people lead with fear, and the problem with fear is it's never ending. As adversaries change their tactics, their techniques, it's going to change. So every week you can't go to your customer and say, well, I know last week I told you to be fearful of this. Next week, we're going to be fearful of this other thing. And I think that's where, the vCISO network, the idea is get us together, get these, common language, common understanding of the role of a vCISO, but I also kind of did it as a reverse job board, right? So, as we start pushing marketing, instead of, having companies go out there and say, hey, I'm looking for a vCISO, and then get 1,000 vCISOs submit, their information is, I created a section of the vCISO network where the vCISOs can go and advertise their practice. And then any companies looking for a vCISO, if they log in, they can go to the Find a vCISO corner and actually look through and figure out which company might fit the culture or the need or the compliance background that they're expecting experience with. So kind of a reverse job board. I've also, kind of thought to the future. What does it look like in the vCISO network? And so, there's always the question of monetization of forums and things like that. And, ultimately my goal there is to have a program of training, of tool sets, of things like that, that a vCISO can, kind of log in, have the best practices, have the templates for a GRC, have the risk catalogs, for natural risks, stuff that's not business specific. How can we get a catalog of all those things and actually be of value to a vCISO's practice? And so that's probably the future goal of the vCISO network, is having this area with these resources, trainings. I've worked a little bit with Evan. He's the president, I think the CEO of FR Secure, and also created a security studio and the certified vCISO course. And so there's been some collaboration here in the Dallas-Fort Worth market between, some of the vCISOs and Evan and the CVCISO course to actually, kind of bring this together. So, he's teaching, finding that community and, using the vCISO network as an example. So we've gotten a lot of referrals through that courseware. So, ultimately I think the long-term strategy is let's, make a platform where you've got resources, you've got value, and, as a community, we can grow.
I'm glad that you brought up the course. I think it's the same one that I'm thinking about. That I know at one point in time it was advertised on one of the LinkedIn boards that I run for the virtual CISO exchange, and the questions that came both into the board there and also privately to me was about a couple of things, but mainly about accreditation. Is this an accredited course, or will it be accredited? Or because when you hear certification, I think about an accrediting body, and I
Sure.
haven't been able to find out if there is something behind it or what the thoughts are behind that. Do you have any insight?
That I don't know. I mean, I haven't asked those questions.
Because I mean the idea I like, but I kind of go hot and cold on courses because I've seen a lot. I'm not saying this is the case here, but I've seen a lot in the industry where it's been companies that have been putting out courses, but it's basically been just kind of like more like a training course and a money generator as opposed to a certification. So, but it's an exciting thing. It's exciting to actually see that there's like some movement to try to educate folks in the virtual CISO world. Do you have to have any experience as a virtual CISO to join the vCISO network, or
You don't.
okay?
No, so the vCISO network is open for anybody. I mean, I do have a kind of a leading question on, when you register to say, are you a vCISO? Are you looking to hire a vCISO? But that's more of a, just so that we understand, if you're not a vCISO, if you are, do you have your own practice? Are you looking to, are you a company looking to hire a vCISO? It's just more of a kind of a demographic question, but there is no requirements for joining the vCISO network.
Okay, well, good. Obviously, too, you've been working with small and mid-sized businesses. I think you said that your customers range from a size of 4 employees to like 1,000. What would you say that right now is the highest significant threat to small and mid-sized businesses in information security?
I want to go back to bad advice. I think that yes, it's easy to rattle off ransomware is a threat. ransomware. Now we're running into the extortion only. So we're not going to encrypt your data. We're just going to steal your data and then extort you for it. I think as the threats are evolving, yes, there's always that threat. There's always the email vector. There's always that. But ultimately it comes down to culture. I mean, when you get into a larger enterprise, you actually have a structured culture. That typically doesn't exist in the SMB space. Typically it's anybody can go walk into the president's office and ask questions. There's not a tiered leadership model. So when you take typical cybersecurity governance and, top-down approach and building, these things, they don't exist in the SMB space. And so, really, I think when it comes to the bad advice as being one of the biggest threats, I've seen MSPs that say they do security, but they're not even implementing an EDR because it's too expensive for their bottom line before they do their MRR. But they'll advise the company that it's not needed, or they'll say this version that I'm putting on your computer is the EDR version, but on the background it's not. I think those are the biggest risks, because the company is putting, the customer is putting their faith, their dollars, they're transferring this risk to a third party. But they're not understanding where that third party is helping or hurting their business. You take some of the bigger breaches in the channel that have happened over the last few years, and these are definitely things that we have to take into account. It's leading to regulations on the MSP side. But in that regard, you've got one company that has access to 10, 100,000 customers, and they're unifying a tech stack. And if there's any gaps in that tech stack or in the advice and protections that they're doing, then you're harming the larger population of SMBs. And I think that's the greatest risk for SMB is, I'm paying to have someone manage my technology so I don't have to hire it out. And I take their quarterly business reviews and what they're saying that we need to do. And I'm saying, okay, let's do it. If I can afford it, let's do it. And then they're taking that and saying, okay, you're protected, but then they get their business insurance quote and it says, okay, provide me all this documentation, and none of that documentation exists.
Right.
So that's why I say bad advice is probably the biggest risk, because it leads to all the other risks that we as cyber professionals talk about all the time with the ransoms, the phishes, all of that.
So it sounds like it's fair to say that any SMB that is looking for a virtual CISO should definitely vet the service to see what their experience is in order to ensure that they're not going to get bad advice.
I agree. Yes. And I think it goes back to the, trust but verify, or now the zero trust, right? We as, vCISOs, we're used to doing the vendor questionnaires, the risk assessment questionnaires, the vendor onboarding.
They're so much fun, aren't they?
but those questions are there for a reason. And so if you were to then turn around and say, let me run this on the service provider that's providing these services, what are they doing to protect me? What are they doing to protect themselves? Which in turn protects me, and interpreting those results. That's where even a short-term vCISO engagement just to help find an MSP is a great move for SMB, even if it's not a long-term vCISO engagement.
So you're in the security space, you're an entrepreneur, you're running a collaboration site, a lot of stress involved. What do you do to decompress?
Well, so part of the entrepreneur, I have another business, but no, I'm a firearms instructor. So, there's a lot of stress relief and going to the range, and, also training people, personal protection, that kind of thing. So that's my biggest decompression.
And I'm sure that you pinged on the California accidental release of those who had, I think it was applied for concealed carry or something like that.
It was everyone that had an issued license.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm actually going to talk about it later on. I think on another segment, or maybe I'm not really sure yet, because I just saw that come across today. Well, all right. Future plans: continue to grow the business.
Continue to grow the business, grow the vCISO network. I'm working on, I kind of put a teaser out on LinkedIn. I'm working on something major for the vCISO market. I'm, meeting with a lot of academics, with, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, to try to bring something to light. So there's some work there. So stay tuned. But yeah, there's definitely big plans to grow, but keep doing the vCISO thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, William, I really appreciate you joining us today. It's been a fascinating conversation, from everything, talking about starting a business to the virtual CISO space. And so website for systems, that's your company website,
It
right?
it is logos.systems.
And then vciso.network.
Correct.
Okay, then I got it right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you.
All right, everybody, stay secure.